talk into the. Yeah, okay. So I'm very happy that we were able to get Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy to come and give us a talk this morning. He is the former Chief Election Commissioner from 2004 to 2005, and he's primarily responsible for overseeing the 2004 Lok Sabha elections. He has written a book about corruption in the electoral process, and we are very happy to have him come and talk about his experience and ways that groups like ours could participate in the process. Mr. Krishnamurthy. So just use this mic.
Whichever you suggest.
This is for the camera,
Fine.
so don't move too much.
Very good morning to all of you. Well, I came with an open mind in the sense that I didn't know what I have to talk about, except that you are going to talk about election data. But then what kind of a data you are looking for, or what kind of intention is behind this data camp, I have no idea. Be that as it may, as you have been told, I left the Election Commission in 2005, and I am settled in Chennai. We have been in the Election Commission right from the beginning. We have been trying to bring as many innovations as possible. The one that I tried to do during the period when I was in the Election Commission is to have the electronic voting machines used in all the polling stations in India. At that time it was about 800,000, and now it's about almost 1 million polling stations we have in India. And it was a mammoth job in the sense to make people realize the value of the electronic voting machine, to get used to it. We had to go to the press, we had to go to the villages, we had to organize training camps at so many places. It was almost a carnival at that time. But then it was, I must say that it was a fairly successful experiment. The number of complaints that came against the machine was hardly 1%, not even 1%, 0.1%. And it was mainly because of the mistakes among the human beings operating the machine, and not due to the machine itself. Although there is a big move in India at the moment questioning the authenticity and the accuracy of the electronic voting machines. You are perhaps aware these machines are made in Bangalore and Hyderabad. In Bangalore by the Bharat Electronics, and in Hyderabad by Electronics Corporation of India. Both are defense public sector undertakings. It has been indigenously devised, and it has been, in my opinion, it has been giving a robust service. And although there are critics saying that it can be misused, but they have not been able to prove that it has or it can be misused. In fact, two people who strongly criticized the machines, they went up to the Supreme Court and they couldn't prove it. And what is more ironical is that both of them got elected in the subsequent elections, and they don't speak about the accuracy of the electronic voting machine. I mean, if you want to know the names, I can mention. One is Jayalalitha, the other one is Amarinder Singh of Punjab. But then today we are supposed to discuss the election data. The Election Commission gives some basic information, but then there are constraints on the part of the Election Commission to give you the analytical information about this, because of the need to maintain neutrality, the need to ensure that the Election Commission doesn't at any point of time give an impression that they are giving information with a purpose, or with a political purpose particularly. So that's the reason why you have only factual information. I don't know how many of you have seen the website of Election Commission of India. It has tremendous information. In fact, for my own observation, I went through the whole website yesterday just to make myself qualified to speak to you. And it has improved over a period of years, and there are a lot of information about the candidates, about the political parties, and there are affidavits that are filed consequent to a Supreme Court decision. But then you don't really get some juicy information that you really need. So that you have got to, the voluntary organizations have been doing. The one which has been quite significantly doing the analytical job has been the Association for Democratic Reforms. And they have been analyzing and giving information state-wise and also for the general election for the whole country about the candidate's profile, about their educational qualifications, about their assets and so on. But one more step you will find there is another website called Liberty Institute. They also give information, but they do a little more analytical in the sense compare from one election data to another election data and give you the information about the candidates, their profile and so on. But the most important thing is that in these analytical information, most of them, although they are unbiased and they are certainly worth utilizing, but then the people are looking for macro level information in the sense not necessarily with reference to a particular political party or not necessarily with reference to a particular state. So we in the Election Commission have not been able to do it, but there are organizations beyond this Liberty Institute and this Association for Democratic Reforms who have been studying. And I don't know, I just showed it to Nisha about the book that I have written. It's called The Miracle of Democracy, HarperCollins publication in 2008. I have tried to give some kind of an information about the election data. But what probably you will be looking for, I really don't know, but then I presume that you will be looking for the political parties, how they are being managed, and for example, whether there is internal democracy in political parties, and then the candidates, how do they contribute to the for example, in the parliament debates and so on. There are again other voluntary organizations which have been analyzing the contribution made by individual members of the parliament or the legislature. In fact, there is one organization in Chennai called the Prime Point, and they give a award rather, to parliamentarians taking active interest, and they have got a scheme by which they analyze how many speeches were made, how many questions were asked, and how many short motion or cut motion was adopted and so on. So they have a fairly detailed parameter. I think you can go to the website of Prime Point, and they will give you every year how do they analyze the performance of each candidate, and then they give a certificate and an award recognizing their contribution. But then there are much more information available in the Election Commission website which can be considered. One deficiency in our present system is that we do not have age profile of the voters, in the sense we cannot give at any point of time. Perhaps it's worth considering. Maybe Election Commission will eventually find a method by which how many voters in the age group of say 18 to 25 they come and cast their vote, and how many in the age group of 40 and 50 they come and exercise their vote. But then there are some limitations in that, but I am sure in course of time these kind of information will be available. But the major point is we try to be as factual as possible, and there are certain limitations in going into details. But we used to bring out a monthly or quarterly newsletter called Election News, but unfortunately it has not been continued now. And then we also send us an annual report of the elections conducted during that period. That information should be available in the Election Commission website itself. Previously we used to send a report to the Parliament on the performance of election. Annually we used to send that, and then a detailed report of the general elections conducted by the Election Commission. This has been discontinued by one of my illustrious predecessors, whom you must have heard of, Mr. T.N. Seshan, probably to show his authority as the Indian Election Commission being autonomous. And we have stopped it, and we don't submit this information any longer, but then we make it available as a publication. In fact, I carry with me the election data up to 2000, and initially the data management was not all that satisfactory. In 1952, when the election was held, It was all, I think, more or less dominated by one party. And secondly, the anxiety to be part of the election management was so much there, and people are all celebrating it almost as a carnival. And there was not much of a enthusiasm from the point of view of data collection. But then over a period of time, we have been able to develop this information of the elections conducted and election management, etc. But then we still feel that there is considerable scope for research in these data, and perhaps organizations like yours should seriously consider how they can be used. In fact, there are many areas where, apart from the age profile, I think though we have certain other information about the gender of the voters participating in the election, etc. But then there are many areas where we need to assess, for example, the political parties functioning. There is no major analytical study on this. Although we are supposed to have around 1,000 political parties in India as of now, and only about 6 are national parties and about 40 to 50 state level parties, but others are all not recognized for symbol purposes, and these are all, some of them work as lobbying organizations, and they are certainly not taking part in the elections. In fact, at one stage, the Election Commission itself issued letters to many of these parties who did not participate in the elections, and whether they could be removed from the list of registered political parties. Unless and until you participate in the election, you can really call yourself as a political party, at least with as far as the Election Commission is concerned. But then, although no political party has been debarred, because we don't have power to disqualify any political party. But then we can, for example, we provide a lot of information to political parties. As you know, the voter roll is supplied to the political party as well as to the candidate contesting the elections. Now, these are all items involving public expenditure. We provide time for candidates to, political parties, candidates to come on the national television network, allot the time, and this kind of facilities that we provide for the political parties. Now, the impact of it has not been studied. Similarly, the question of cost of the elections. Although I myself have made a study for the Institute of Democracy and Economic Assistance in Sweden, cost of elections, it's only a presumptive study. It was not, I cannot say it is absolutely authentic or data based, but then we took one state as an example, how many candidates were there and what are the permissible expenditure, and permissible expenditure as far as the candidates are concerned. As you all know, there is no law relating to political parties, there is no law relating to the expenditure of political parties, except the political parties are required to submit the election expenditure for information, which are again put on the website of the Election Commission. But then no auditing is done by the Election Commission itself, except that the audit report of the political parties are made available to the Election Commission, and they are put on the website. But then these are all, I would say, crude information available on the website, but not much of an analytical study has been made. And there are too many agencies involved in this, as you know. The political parties enjoy tax exemption if they have income tax exemption, if they file audited accounts with the tax authorities. Now, the audited accounts automatically qualify for the tax exemption. But then who really goes through the audited accounts? Is it made available to public? It is not made available to public. So I have been talking about this and asking for a separate law for political parties, like the Companies Law Act. You should have a separate law for political parties covering the formation of the political parties, the functioning, the internal democracy, and also the dissolution, disputes. A lot of disputes come among the political parties, various sections of the political parties, and they have an impact on the election symbol. And so these are all decided by the Election Commission that we three members of the Election Commission sit in judgment, hear both the parties and give our views. But then there is no law except that we have some case laws of the Supreme Court on the basis of which we give our decisions. So there are a number of areas where research can be done and where probably data can be gathered from what is available in the Commission, and you can certainly bring out a research publication on that. If you have any specific question, I will be happy to answer, but I thought this is a kind of a preliminary introductory remarks. But if you have any specific questions, please do ask. Yeah.
Sir, there are numbers and in terms of election spending amount decided per candidate depending on Lok Sabha
Or the Assembly.
How is that number arrived at?
Well, it started with a basic figure of around 5 lakhs some time back. And then we do some kind of inflation indexing. But whether they are absolutely right, I can tell you it is only right on paper. In the sense, there are a lot of loopholes in the law. First of all, the political parties, their expenditure is not subject to any ceiling. So if you have a candidate-specific expenditure, then you are supposed to take it into the account of the concerned candidate. There again, in one place, for example, in Nagaland or in a place like Bihar, expenditure may be far less than the expenditure in bigger places like Maharashtra or, for that matter, Delhi. So it's all very, we go by the statement given, but we do scrutinize the expenditure observers. They do scrutinize the statement given by the candidates concerned, but it's not been standardized at all. So in the sense that while the information is available about the individual expenditure incurred, it does not carry the expenditure incurred by the political parties. Then there are also exemptions in law. For example, 40 representatives of the political parties are allowed to do campaigning. Their expenditure is not included in the candidate's expenditure. Only thing is the party is expected to give in advance the number of persons who will be canvassing, the places where they will be going, etc. There again, there is a confusion in the law, in the sense this kind of limitation of number, does it apply to a bypoll or does it apply to a general elections or to the state assembly elections? Should it not vary? In my opinion, they should vary. Of course, we have written to the government. I don't know how many of you have seen the recommendation I sent to the Prime Minister in 2004. 22 recommendations were sent to the government. Unfortunately, they held a all-party meeting and they decided they had a consensus not to introduce any reform. So, in fact, very often the excuse given is there is no consensus. In my opinion, it is an excuse. If you have a majority in the parliament, you are able to bring about them. But the ruling establishment itself is not so much keen about these reforms, although in public platforms they will say that reforms are necessary and so on. But when you come to the specifics, I don't think any of the political parties is serious about it. And we have been, of course, fighting for it. I have been associated with a few institutions. The one in which we are a little more active in the sense that it's called Foundation for Advanced Management of Elections. Mr. Lingdo is the chairman and I happen to be the vice chairman. We do conduct workshops in various places to promote awareness. And we also join other organizations, including some international agencies, to promote voter awareness and so on. But then the data as they are available now are limited as far as the Election Commission is concerned. And election expenditure, apart from the deficiencies in the system and deficiency in the law, the individual candidates are also incurring expenditure in cash which are not accounted for. We have a system by which the expenditure monitors will observe. Now, of course, we have provided video cameras and so on, but then there are ways by which this can be camouflaged, I suppose, with the result that the expenditure statement given by the individual candidate, you can only take it as probably 70% correct, perhaps, as far as the individual candidate is concerned. As far as the non-individual expenditure is concerned, that is incurred by friends and relatives and probably the political parties, there's a certain amount of vagueness about it, and this again provides for some confusion in that area. I personally feel.
I'm sorry, just finish and then we have one more question.
I personally feel that the state that is sorry, the expenditure statement or expenditure control, it's very difficult to really monitor. And the best answer to it, my personal view, is that state funding of the elections. How do we do it? I've got some details which I will explain later. Who's the other person?
Yeah. I have a question on the databases itself. So why does the Election Commission have multiple databases for multiple cities at the national level, at the local level, for the graduate constituency? So there are so many things which are not in sync. And it's also, the other related part is does it make sense to have, for the Election Commission to have your own team to gather the voter roll details, because now you're dependent on teachers or the local government or the corporations to do that, and the quality of information is a big issue, right? So it's, in fact, a lot of time people say getting a passport is easier than getting yourself on the voter rolls. So what do you think about on this?
Well, I don't think it is so difficult to get your name on the voter roll, although there are probably mental reservations or some local area deficiencies could be there, I don't deny that. Now it has been fairly streamlined in the sense that anybody can apply online, and throughout the country this is applicable, online application. But then thereafter what happens is the question whether it can be done at the central level or at the state level. See, ultimately, as you know, the Election Commission has only about 300 people working in Delhi. We depend upon the state electoral officers. They are known as chief electoral officers. They are appointed in consultation with the Election Commission. Then normally the state government provides some names, and then we pick up one or two, and then we suggest that these people could be appointed. When once they are appointed, they are insulated from the influence or control of the state government. But then, of course, subtle influences can be there. But by and large, our selection has proved to be effective, and the data collected at the state level is certainly fairly authentic in the sense that it is not biased. But your point that whether it can be at the central place or not, well, it can be, provided we have some kind of a national center for election data. I don't think the Election Commission considers this as an urgent necessity, but there are a number of voluntary organizations who have taken a tremendous initiative in this regard, and I see no reason why really the Election Commission should spend so much time on that, because our main purpose is to conduct elections and certainly provide the data for you, but then the analytical part of the election data, whether the Election Commission should do it or not. But then one more point I should mention. The Election Commission is charged with the responsibility of conducting elections for the state assemblies, state legislative councils, the parliament elections, the president and the vice president elections, and the Rajya Sabha elections. Well, the state election, for example, the local self-government elections like the municipalities, the corporations, the panchayats, etc., it is supposed to be done by a state election commission, which is provided for in the constitution, although this institution has not acquired that kind of credibility as the Central Election Commission, for which there are ample reasons, because these state election commissioners are appointed by the state governments. They are given the state high court judge rank, and they are appointed for an initial period of 3 years, and they can be extended. So if the term can be extended, automatically they are at the mercy of the state government. In the case of the central government, the appointment is done by the government, but they are given a 5-year term, and they can be removed only by impeachment. And these are the safeguards available. So with the result that the State Election Commission management of the election is far different from the Central Election Commission management. Here again, I don't know whether this is the forum for me to talk, but the Central Election Commission has acquired a credibility over a period of time for various reasons, of course. I think if you can analyze, or if you can go through the history of the Election Commission, you can call it as pre-session portion and the post-session of the Election Commission, because that is the time in 1991 when Mr. Session became the Chief Election Commissioner. He brought about tremendous changes in both election management and in the control of the political parties and so on. So until 1991, the data management may not have been that comprehensive as it is available later now. The post-1991 election management has also improved because of the introduction of the electronic, or we call it as electronic photo identity cards. Here again, the data that is available in the identity card is not adequate. In fact, during my period, I was trying to bring a biometric card where that could be used for all citizens above the age of 18. But then the cost was so high, we couldn't really get the approval of the government to spend that amount, because it amounted to, at that time, I'm talking about 2004, it amounted to 250 rupees per card. And you can imagine for about 800 million voters how much it would be. But then I think time has come when we have to gradually introduce, at least prospectively, if not retrospectively, for the new voters, we should introduce the biometric card. The Aadhaar card is supposed to be an innovation to improve these matters, but I am not sure whether it has really been able to make a dent in the identification of voters, etc. But then there is a lot of debate going on about the efficacy of the Aadhaar card. But coming back to your question about data management at the center, we can think of it. In fact, it can be even a private initiative instead of the government coming in forward with that. And if there are any willing persons, we can even, the association with which I am associated, namely the Foundation for Advanced Management of Elections, can make a joint study of maybe on a pilot basis and then replicate it at a national level. Yeah.
This is just a question about maps. As of now, we have the maps of parliamentary constituency and assembly constituency fairly defined well, even the wards. But when I see polling booth level maps, they're mostly hand drawn. I mean, does Election Commission has digital maps of polling stations, or we don't?
We have the polling station maps of all the states. Normally, of course, we use it to identify the sensitive polling stations, the semi-sensitive polling stations, and the normal polling stations. We have that information adequately. Probably it is not made available to the public, but it is certainly available. In fact, I think they have a lot of categories of polling stations, and for example, the distance from the maximum distance in the constituency and so on. Because as you know that the distance for the voter to go and to exercise his vote should not be more than 2 kilometers. So we ensure that, and for that purpose the map is very regularly used. Yeah, I think the gentleman here, please.
This is in response to your last remark about inviting private players for helping with data management, and this recently, several months back, Google itself had actually approached the Election Commission with that type of a proposal, and then I believe some people had approached the courts, and it was quickly abandoned. So what do you, I mean, not specifically with regard to Google, of course, but with private players, private corporations, big data now being the trend, how do you feel about the privacy and other
I
public
myself came on the TV on this very issue.
Okay.
They asked me whether Google assistance can be taken by the Election Commission. You see, this is a very sensitive topic. I said I personally have no problem provided suitable safeguards are introduced in the arrangement between a private organization and the Election Commission. But my own feeling is that Election Commission should have some kind of an independent authority to assist in these matters. They can be used by the Election Commission, but the Election Commission itself should not hire a person or an institution, because it will come into some kind of a controversy in the sense that detailed information about the voters become available. One of the things that we were very keen to avoid is it's very easy for criminal elements to make use of the election voter register to identify, for example, which people are living alone and which community is living in this constituency and so on. So we were very keen that such information should not be made available, at least by ourselves, to the public in the sense that it can be misused. So there are genuine apprehensions in the minds of the Election Commission and even the government perhaps that the voter register should not be misused. But with all that, we have made the voter register public. It is not that it is not available. But then a particular voter can certainly access the information and then find out whether his name or her name is there or not. But to use an organization, and particularly if it is a multinational organization, there are apprehensions, and unless and until safeguards are provided, it may not be advisable to enlist a non-governmental organization for this purpose, and more so if it is a multinational organization.
So your one remark was that election reforms were rejected by the parliament in 2004, and I believe they were rejected before that and after that. My question is, can activists or citizens or organizations like these take the legal route to bring about reforms, or is there a politics to that as well?
Not at all. In fact, most of the reforms that have come in the last few years are only through legal recourse to the courts. Most of the judgments have been through the Supreme Court, and some of them the Election Commission themselves supported such proposals before the court. For example, the none of the above option, I was the one, even before it went to the court, I wrote to the government that we should give the option to the voters. I thought of introducing it myself without getting the government approval. But then the ballot form paper is prescribed under the Representation of People's Act. And I was told that if I went ahead and did the general elections with that, somebody can take us to the court and say that it is a illegal ultra virus of the Constitution. And hence I didn't do it. Though personally I felt it should have been introduced long ago. But then non-governmental organization, Association for Democratic Reforms, they went to the court, and I filed an affidavit in the from the Election Commission saying that we support this proposal. So there are a number of such instances. For example, the affidavits which are declared by the experts, by the candidates, they are as a result of the Supreme Court judgment. Similarly, a recent judgment of the Supreme Court, that a sitting member of the legislature or the parliament, and if he is convicted, he automatically loses the post. The case in point is Lalu Prasad Yadav. He automatically got, and they wanted to amend it, as you know. Unfortunately or fortunately, the effort did not prove fruitful. But the point is, electoral reforms, none of the political parties is really interested. And they will give their own excuses. And for example, representation of women in the parliament, as you know, there has been the proposal pending for a number of years, 33 and 1/3%, though they have brought it for the local government elections, but not to the state. And it is beset with so many difficulties. When the minister was about to introduce the bill, one member of the party went and tore off the bill and prevented him from proceeding further, and then there was a hangama in the parliament. So the electoral reforms, I don't have much of a hope will come from the political parties. So it is the voluntary organizations, and they have been doing a wonderful job. In fact, I must place on record my appreciation of the number of voluntary organizations who have taken interest in this. Would you like to have more questions? I have no problem, but I don't know about the time constraint.
Just last two, okay?
Okay.
So, you mentioned
I'll come to you.
You mentioned your apprehensions about Google or some MNC handling the data. But recently there has been an incident where during the Holi, a lot of people received personalized greetings from Mr. Nandan Nilekani. And some of those, dear Mr., the spelling was exactly similar to the Aadhaar card. So, I didn't, this came as a bit of stuff in the news, but again it was vanished in a day or two. So,
in fact, I agree with you in the sense, is there a need for an outside organization to help the Election Commission? That is the fundamental question. In certain areas, perhaps it would be useful, but whether it should be given to a private organization or an organization which is where people will suspect it can be misused. So that is the reason why there were reservations. Now, even as you say, a local man can misuse it, whatever information is available. In fact, that is where the data matching needs to be a little more scientifically done. For example, one gentleman came to me when I was in the Election Commission. He said he will integrate the data available in respect of a voter about his ration card, about his license, about so on. He will integrate and do it at free of charge, he said. Will the Election Commission do it? In fact, we had a discussion amongst ourselves whether it could be done or not. But there were reservations that it could not be given to a private person because there is scope for misuse of the whole thing, the data. Now, when an individual candidate making use of available information, I have a feeling that Aadhaar card names and addresses are available for public consumption. It is not made confidential. But the individual details of the voter, they should not be made available to the public. Yeah.
One last question.
So I have two parts of the question. The fundamental question is, we have been having this voters card for last quite some time. But sometimes the voter name is there, the next time when it comes, its name is not there, and all that is happening actually. The basic question what we are asking is this: once the voter is votes, that data should get into the election commission report, and if that is not there, on its own should take up a reason to find out what happened to that Mr. X, why is he not being there in this list, and they can track down and somebody responsible can be caught on that. That's number one.
Point well taken. You are complete or you have got...
One more part of it is there. I have heard of this when Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister. I believe there was a ruling that was passed and it was approved in all other houses, and it was to be passed wherein any individual gentleman to become Prime Minister or President should have 2 or less than 2 kids. So it was already through and it was to be implemented. He has to lose his Prime Minister post. That was brought to his notice and he scrapped it, I believe. Till that I was following. After that we have not heard. We have been waiting that to come out at some time, but we haven't heard of it. Is that any such thing was there?
Well, as far as the initiative regarding limiting the number of children, I know it was shot down by a number of political parties. I don't think it would have been introduced. I think, jocularly they used to say Lalu Prasad Yadav had more than, and he was the first victim, would have been the first victim of the provision. But be that as it may, I do not think such initiatives will be really effective. And although incentives and disincentives can be built, the first part of the question about the voter registration, I do agree that sometimes names disappear. It's something like, I believe General Suharto was asked to name the aircraft built by the Indonesian Air Force. He suggested the name of Gatotkac. And he said, because they also follow the Indian mythologies. And he said it can appear, disappear, and reappear. That is the reason. So this does happen in the election voter register. Initially, yes, we had a lot of problems. I will tell you, the numbering of the residences is so complicated in some places, particularly in Andhra Pradesh. Probably it's the worst system that you have. And in Tamil Nadu, they said from old number they came to new number, and our voter register was completely, spoiled or was made chaotic, in the sense that we had a lot of complaints. The other question is some of them, they are exercising the vote in, say, 2004 election, but 2009, although they live there, they are not to be seen there. Janagraha, an organization in Bangalore, in fact, I am associated with as an advisory member of the election matters. We conducted for, I think, is it Subhash Nagar constituency? Shanti Nagar constituency, where door-to-door verification was done by an independent organization. And we built in what is known as, I think, area voter mitra. And every road, every street, we had a set of volunteers. They were all paid a nominal amount for the expenses, etc. And it was verified, and it was found that there were deficiencies in the voter register. But there is a major problem as far as election commission is concerned, is the migratory nature of our voters. For example, particularly in cities, they move from one part of the city to another. Then we have, in some of the hilly areas, seasonal migration takes place. Similarly, in urban areas, we have a lot of youngsters some of them studying in schools and colleges and higher educational institutions. They want to exercise the vote where they are studying, although their name appears in their home constituency. See, our electoral law, that is the Representation of People's Act, provides for the principle of residence as the criterion for entering into the voter register. It is not principle of citizenship. That is the problem. If we have citizenship as the basis, you could exercise your vote in any constituency and so on. But the Americans have that. We don't have it here. So the first principle of residence, only the non-resident Indian voters are allowed to vote in their own address which is given in the passport, provided they come and personally exercise the vote. So there are a number of complications in actually preparing an accurate voter register. Similarly, there are a lot of deaths which are not taken into account. I did suggest to Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, he was asking me what can we do to assist the Election Commission. I said, why not you computerize the deaths and births register, so that it is very easy for us. At the age of 18, we can verify a particular person is entitled to become a voter or not. In West Indies, they have a system. At the age of 17, they prepare a provisional voter register, with the result that when they complete 18, automatically they take them into the voting register. So the number of reforms possible. We are on a very crude system of entering the voter register, but there are improvements over a period of time. For example, now I think the Election Commission has said in urban areas, even 15 days before the election, they are holding a camp in each polling station to ensure that if their name is not there, it is entered. There is another system in New Zealand, which perhaps I don't know whether you are aware, that if a person is living in that area and his name is not there, he is allowed to vote in a separate box, ballot box. The names are entered, and at the time of counting, if the number of such votes is less than the difference between the winner and the loser, then they are ignored. But if it is more than the number between the winner and the loser, these are verified and then taken into account, and the results are announced later. So this could be introduced in India perhaps, but then it may delay the result process. So a number of variations are possible, and of course, I'm sure there are a lot of young minds to apply their mind to suggest new reforms in this area. But we have introduced number of changes. For example, in Maharashtra elections, we kept the voter register in each post office in the rural areas and told them you can verify it 1 month in advance, and if you have problem, then file your form number 6 at the post office. We'll collect it from the post office and so on. But the basic question is the migratory nature of an Indian voter. That is a big problem that we have.
It seems Vivek has been raising hands. I couldn't see sitting down. So this is the last question, and in 2 minutes we'll answer, and then we'll break for tea.
You'll be here all day.
And he'll be here all day. You can.
My question is that we take the autonomous nature of the Election Commission for granted almost. But how does the Commission maintain your autonomy, and how has it been maintaining your autonomy?
Autonomy in exercise of its powers, or autonomy as far as the data management is concerned?
Both, I would say.
Now, as far as the exercise of powers, we have reached a stage, the autonomy is absolutely sound. It's very difficult for an election commissioner or a chief election commissioner to go down the standards already set up. I think I would say probably since 1991. Of course, there have been some aberrations. I can't say that it is totally perfect. The election commissioners are human beings, and they are from the bureaucracy generally taken. Although in some of the Western countries, non-bureaucrats are also appointed in the election commission. We have an election commission in Britain which does not conduct elections, of course. They conduct only referendums. They are not authorized to conduct elections. It was the first election commissioner, chief election commissioner, was the head of the BBC. He was appointed. So journalist, you can say. So there are possibilities of others being appointed. But one thing I can say with a reasonable amount of certainty, that the very few biases as far as the functioning of the election commissioners are concerned. I can narrate number of instances, although I will not burden it with my own autobiographical nature. But there is one incident where, for example, what did I want to say? The announcement of the election schedule itself, we keep it so confidential. This time they made it public 1 day before. That's because they wanted to invite the press and they had to give them the time, etc. And they gave it 1 day before. the secrecy of the election dates, for example, is very important because the model code of conduct comes into force. And many of the, if you give them, they know the dates in advance, many of the last minute executive measures taken by the government are announced, are taken during that period. There are umpteen number of complaints from various political parties against the state governments particularly. They take decisions and antedate them, and these are the things that take place. Although some of them have been taken to the court and they have been reprimanded and so on. But as far as the autonomy of the Election Commission is concerned, I think the best judge is the Supreme Court itself. And it has given on many occasions rulings certifying to the reasonable independence of the Election Commission. There have been, as I told you, 1 or 2 cases where they were found to be, or they are alleged to be closer to the ruling party. But such marginal things could be there. But the independence of the Election Commission in conducting the elections, I think, was best highlighted when we did the Kashmir elections. In 2004 and even earlier assembly elections, we had prepared a complete program in the sense that any foreigner could come and see the elections. And we provided them bulletproof cars, and we took them by Indian Air Force. Whichever constituency they wanted to visit, we took them. And the whole state was thrown open to the international accredited media and international diplomats who came from other countries, who are also serving diplomats in Delhi. And the first person to certify the reasonable authenticity or the independence, credibility of the election was the US ambassador himself. And he said that we are satisfied that the Kashmir election, because that was internationally it was being watched. And so we wanted to make it very sure that there was no questionable bias in the elections. Although voter turnout is one area, I think again in your data management, there's a lot of scope for study. In urban areas or even Srinagar, the voter percentage used to be 15 to 20%, whereas the interior Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir, the average used to be about 50%. Even in Srinagar itself, now it has improved over a period of time. Although there are political issues like boycott by some of the separatists and so on. But we told them very clearly at the time of the elections that if you want to boycott the elections, we will not have any objection. But you cannot prevent any voter. For example, one of the elections, the polling booth, opposite to polling booth, there used to be a coffin placed by the separatists and say that if you enter the polling booth, you will end up here. But that disappeared in the next elections. So we, for example, in conducting the Kashmir elections, we took people from Urdu knowing people from Lucknow and Punjab and manned 50% of the polling station because the local people didn't have faith in the local government at that time. But then the credibility is built over a period of time, and I have no hesitation in saying that the election management system is well oiled, well fine-tuned to ensure that there is no bias. But occasional local variations, local things are possible in the sense as we use the state government officials for some of the things. For example, the voter register itself in one place, when they go for, because we do the door-to-door enumeration once in 5 years, some people don't even go to that street and then they give a certificate that we are verified. So these kind of personal, I won't say violation, personal deficiencies in some areas are there, and these are things which we have to take a note of. I'm sure technology will come into use more often and ensure that at least our voter roll is 90% accurate, if not more than that. For example, in Pondicherry and Kerala and Haryana, these are 3 states where we could have 100% authentic voter roll with photograph of each voter. Because I wanted to, actually personally I went to a place where in Pondicherry about 10 people have not been, photo cannot be captured, they could not be given voter identity card. And we found them, some of them were mentally unsound, although their name was there. But then you can say that voter roll is reasonably perfect in these 3 states.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.